Hi everyone, I want to bring you a small updated guide for the God Demon Hunter. I've been playing this build on stream quite a while already in Season 26, and it has been great ever since it was introduced in Season 21. But a lot of people keep asking me, how do I make it so fast, how do I make it so strong? So I just want to give you guys a few pointers of what I actually do to make it so good. I've been covering this build for a few times already, but here we go. So this is the God Demon Hunter, based on the Gears of Dreadland set and Hanging Arrow damage. So the big multipliers that we have are the 9th series satchel. This gives you extra pierces and lots of extra damage for Hanging Arrow. And we also have the Hunter's Wrath belt that goes into the cube in this case, which is another 200% extra damage. And then we have the God set that gives you lots of damage for your primary skills. That includes the Hanging Arrow, which is this skill. And it also makes your strafe shoot this Hanging Arrow automatically when you strafe around and hit enemies with those little projectiles. So strafe doesn't actually do any damage itself, it's all coming from the Hanging Arrow that is triggered by the set. One thing that you have to pay attention to is that you actually keep up your momentum, which is the 2-piece bonus of the set. It gives you extra damage and also extra speed from the 4-piece bonus. So you get up to 160% extra move speed. And this is this buff you see here on the bar that goes up to 20. Every second you lose 1 stack basically, and this will slowly decrease your momentum. And this means that around every 3 seconds or so you want to do 1 arrow, and this way you keep it up at 20 stacks. And basically at the start of the run you stack it to 20. So for example, while the obelisk is opening, you just shoot 5 times, you go in, and then you start blasting. And then you have a bunch of extra skills. So in my case, I have Smokescreen Displacement, which is 100% extra movement speed. I have Shadow Power, Shadow Glide, that gives 30% move speed. We have the Hot Pursuit passive, that gives 20% move speed. We have the Vortecan Angard's Braces, that give 50% move speed when you break an object, which happens quite frequently in T16 runs. And occasionally you get like a Fleeting Shrine, you get a Speed Pylon, you get the Dimensional Speed buff when you like destroy objects from like destructibles and stuff like that. And we have Tactical Advantage that activates for 2 seconds every time I press Smokescreen or Shadow Power. And so this is like how a T16 run looks, nothing really special. You just like strafe around, and every few seconds you stop for a split second, you shoot 1 arrow and everything around you explodes. You can do this setup with very little damage, with very little like investment, because this setup is very strong, and T16 is an absolute breeze for this. So right now I've actually gathered, some paragons already. I have okay gear, but this is running with a non-ancient weapon here. And I got this build started with a character that had 4,500 dexterity, and I was still destroying Torment 16 with this. I just made the character, I boosted it to 70, gambled a few god pieces, and then I started blasting. And that was literally it. Some other like helpful DPS choices that I should mention here maybe are the Death Diggers. So they give you essentially double damage again. Simplicity Strength is a very powerful legendary gem that you want to include in such a build. We have the Boon of the Hoarder, of course, for D16. And Taeguk, because you're keeping it up pretty much all the time just by strafing. So this works like a charm in this setup as well. As you can see, my toughness is extremely low, but it doesn't really matter because of Gold Wrap. As long as you run with Cheat Death and maybe even Cheat Death on your character, so this is my skill setup here, you will be fine unless you pay absolutely no attention at all to how much gold you pick up. But usually you kill 1 enemy, you're invincible, and you just keep rolling through the entire rift. Now you can also play this build in greater rifts, so this looks very similar to what I just showed in T16. It is a formidable speed farming build for solo players, especially on the Demon Hunter. In general, Demon Hunter has a bunch of good builds to farm with. So there's this build, there's the Marauder Demon Hunter, and there's also Impale. And all 3 of those are performing at pretty similar levels, and they're kind of like middle of the pack in speed farming content compared to other classes. So Demon Hunter is doing pretty well, and God Demon Hunter is definitely one thing that a lot of people like, I guess. So you might want to do this in speed GRs as well. You can see here GR99. This is also still with a fairly unoptimized character, so I think I have like 1 augment on this. I have an ancient weapon here, but it's nothing really crazy. And you can do sub 2-minute runs on this tier quite comfortably. It is rather tanky, but the setup changes a tiny bit, so I'm gonna show you. So the main changes that they make are that they include a bit more damage and a bit more toughness to actually survive these speedruns, because you don't have gold wrap and things will not immediately blow up all the time. So first of all, we have no gold wrap anymore because it doesn't work. Instead, we just wear the Hunter's Wrath, we wear the full set instead of Ring of Warrior Grandeur and Death Diggers, and we can fit in an extra ring, which is Convention of Elements. This is quite nice. You can also go with Unity or Elusive Ring if you feel too squishy, but this is usually like giving you another like 2-3 tiers bonus here if you can fit it in. We have the Fortress Ballista instead of the Yang's recurve. So here the idea is that you have lots of resource cost reduction for T16. You can press all the buttons and don't have to worry about anything. Here you have to be a bit more careful because you don't have this resource cost reduction, but you get the shield that protects your squirt's necklace. So you can take a hit or two and still keep up your shields, which is very useful, but you have to manage your resources a lot better. So especially the discipline can go down really fast. So if you still run smooth screen displacement, you need to run preparation and focused mind. So this way you gain kind of enough discipline to spam smooth screen most of the time. If you have a little bit of extra resource cost reduction, for example, I have a topaz here, you could roll resource on the shoulder, you could maybe even get some quad factor gloves that have resource and cooldown, these kind of things, maybe resource here. So this helps you out a little bit. But you can also change the smooth screen displacement rune to special recipe that costs only 8 instead of 14. And like this, you will have absolutely no trouble, but you are missing this little speed burst that you get for 1 second when using the other rune. Because you have less resource cost reduction, you also swap out the shadow power and you take something like Wolf Companion. You can also go Boar Companion or Fan of Knives, Bladed Armor for some toughness. Both these options work if you feel a bit squishy. And we also have Blood Vengeance. So this gives you lots of extra resources when you pick up all those gloves in the run. And you have high discipline, you can spam your smurf screen. And this works pretty well when you go at a really fast pace. For pushing, I just want to briefly mention this. We have a few different setups here and they work kind of similar to the GR Speeds version. So you have like the same like Wrath of Clarity, Hunter's Wrath, Convention, etc. But you have a bit of a different weapon choice there. So there is this Valor's Bequest weapon. This is usually used for like the casual end of pushing God Demon Hunter. So this replaces the Fortress Ballista in this case. This Strafe Projectile's Pierce makes it so that, at least in high density, you shoot more of those hanging arrows automatically because of how the cooldowns and the breakpoints work. So this gives you a bit of a damage bonus when there's many targets, and you don't have to shield to protect your squirts. So the only way to protect your squirts is with smurf screen and just not getting hit. Then there's also this Ballista version, almost exactly like the GR Speed version, where you try to protect your squirts with this weapon, and if you can kind of keep squirts up a little bit, like 3-4 stacks on average or so, then you will gain a bit of a benefit. But this is usually something that works only later on when you have higher paragons, like 2, 3, 4k or so, and you can actually invest into toughness a little bit, you gain more vitality, and it really comes down to your squirt's uptime. And lastly, there's also the Odyssey's End setup. This is the ultimate version of the push build in God Demon Hunter. So you play with 2 different generators, and you have Entangling Shot, and you have this massive damage buff. But this is very hard to play a build compared to the other 2 versions. And it goes roughly 2 tiers higher or so. So this is what you should see at the top of the leaderboards if people actually go for it, but most of the time they don't. But this is something that I, for example, will push for sure this season. And if you want to see that, then you might see an upload of me doing this at some point. The way that this is played is that you do rather small pulls and try to keep up your squirts by just not getting hit. And you entangle enemies to gain this extra damage buff and make sure that you refresh it once every 3 seconds. And otherwise you strafe around similar to the other versions with hanging arrows shooting out. So you have like a big nuke on Convention. And otherwise, you know, just do like the cycle every 3 seconds. You shoot 2 different generators instead of 1. And you cycle back and forth between them. I just want to mention that for this build, especially for solo pushing, there are a lot of little details that go into it and a lot of weird mechanics that you might want to check out on our written guide. So there's a mechanics section explaining the breakpoints and the momentum and all these kind of things. And I didn't want to like drag out this video for too long here with this. For speed farming, all this doesn't really matter all that much, but for pushing, you should definitely take a look to get a bit of a better understanding. Also, if you're planning to push the God Demon Hunter, you should know that it's definitely weaker than something like Marauder Demon Hunter. So while they are competitive and both pretty good in speed farming, GoD Demon Hunter definitely loses in pushing. It's not really a pushing build anymore since they changed it in season 23, and you have to be aware that on the overall Demon Hunter leaderboard you won't really perform well at this. So you have the Gears of Dreadlands leaderboard, and this is where you compete with this, and everything else is reserved to Marauder basically. This is already it for this video, so hope you enjoyed this little updated guide for the GoD Demon Hunter. Hope you're having a blast in the season. Subscribe for more Diablo content, and see you guys next time.